Peace, my people. What's good? I wanted to come on here and speak a word about the 7 laws of the universe. How many of y'all working with that? That is serious spiritual technology to shape your mind. This is, once you start to get into the affirmations and, acknowledge the various laws within the being and how they communicate to life, how you see them in the life, it just opens up all kinds of understanding, insight, and whatnot, It's like, sometimes it's hard to deal with, new knowledge, but that's all life is telling you to do, you have to change what you do. You have to redo yourself at various times, many times throughout your life. And that calls for developing new knowledge within, seeking new knowledge, grabbing it, putting it in, and using it. This is the plane of change, That thing called alchemy is a thing, like sometimes we just throw these words around or we hear them thrown around, and after a while they don't mean anything because they didn't mean anything the first time we heard them. Alchemy is one of those, what do they call them? $3 words? I don't know. I can't. One of them words that mean it's like a big word to, for a concept that's weird, abstract, or whatever. The all is mind. When you think about that first law, all is mind. Everything that's going on is a mental construct of God. And life is about aligning yourself, aligning your mind with that mind. That's where you understand that as above, so below, the law of correspondence. There you prove yourself, align with God when you change your mind to what God is thinking, when you tap into what God is thinking, and, this thing about, life is going to challenge you. That's what it's for. Life is going to grow you through challenge, and you have to be able to alchemize what it is that you go through, and what I'm saying when I say that, what is alchemize? In a life that's walking around, alchemize is to change the way you think about things. You had a hardship. You had something that caused you much grief, caused you much pain. Well, you could choose to sit in the sorrow pits. You could choose that. Many people do. They sit in the sour pit and they just exist in the plane of nothing. Not in a good way. They are conditioned at this point to, to go under based on that pain, based on that hurt, whatever that thing was. But they also have the choice to just think about the thing a different way. You can be fatalistic, right? You can say, oh, woe is me, right? And sometimes maybe that's people's process, but maybe you have to do that. But at some point, you got to lift up out of that because what? Life goes on. Life goes on, It's never about just submitting to the negativity that something, sparked within, some circumstance sparked within. It's never about just submitting to that. Now, you acknowledge that, but also acknowledge the way that could hurt you, wallowing in negativity. Wallowing in negativity could hurt your health. It could hurt your relationships with people. You walk around carrying a nasty attitude, and it could hurt the opportunities that are lined up for you in some way. Throwing your vibration off, throwing your attraction ability off, things like that. It's necessary to change the way you think about things such that they don't hurt you in this life. Such that you grow from them in this life. That's the main thing. God gives you weight to lift, to grow the muscle. So lift the weight and grow the muscle. that means changing the effect of the ill that happened. That means positively affecting something that was a negative by learning the lesson, by applying the lesson in your mind. Alchemy, change yourself, change your mind. It doesn't have to hurt you. I'm talking about the worst pain, the worst trauma, the worst thing. Somebody committed the awful atrocity to you, but guess what? That shows you something about who you are on a great level. If God chose to put in front of you that challenge that was so rough, so hard, that says a lot about who God sees you to be and what you can handle. See that as, confirmation that you are something divine. And you need a test, you need a challenge to tweak you. You know what I mean? So you alchemize it with that thought. And you take that into meditation. Affirm that, daily when you wake up. Affirm that divinity that you are for going through whatever it is that you went through. And that's how you alchemize. That's how you change your mind on things. Yeah. All right, y'all. I'm about to start rambling. Peace and love.